Tonight, you are not an emperor commanding legions, nor a senator debating the fate of the Roman world. You are not a gladiator standing before a roaring crowd or a merchant sailing across dangerous seas. Instead, you will live a quieter life, one hidden far from the triumphs and spectacles that fill history books. Tonight, you are a Roman library keeper, a guardian of knowledge in one of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known. While armies march across distant frontiers and emperors build monuments that will stand for centuries, your world exists among shelves of scrolls, whispered conversations, and the scent of papyrus. Every morning before the city fully awakens, you unlock the doors of a vast Roman library. The marble floors are cool beneath your sandals. Sunlight slowly filters through tall windows. Thousands upon thousands of scrolls wait silently in their wooden cabinets, each containing stories, poems, histories, scientific observations, laws, and philosophies gathered from every corner of the empire. Some were copied by Greek scholars centuries ago. Others contain the latest writings arriving from distant provinces. Together they form a treasure greater than gold, though few Romans fully appreciate it. Most citizens think of libraries as quiet buildings filled with books. But in ancient Rome, they are something more. They are centers of learning, symbols of prestige, and monuments to human curiosity. Senators visit to study speeches. Scholars debate ideas that may shape future generations. Poets search for inspiration. Students struggle through difficult texts while dreaming of future careers. Yet behind all of this activity stands someone almost entirely forgotten by history, the library keeper. Your task is not merely to protect scrolls. You must organize knowledge itself. Every scroll must be stored correctly. Every document must be cataloged. Every damaged text must be repaired before precious information disappears forever. Fire, moisture, insects, careless visitors, and simple old age constantly threaten the fragile collection under your care. A single accident could destroy works that can never be replaced. While generals protect Rome's borders, you protect its memory. As the day unfolds, visitors arrive from every level of society. Wealthy senators request historical records. Young students seek wisdom from long-dead philosophers. Traveling scholars bring new manuscripts copied from distant libraries. Some visitors come with genuine curiosity. Others seek prestige by appearing intellectual. You learn to recognize them all. Over the years, countless faces will pass through the library, but the scrolls remain. They watch generations come and go. Outside, Rome is noisy and chaotic. Chariots thunder through crowded streets. Merchants shout in marketplaces. Construction projects reshape the skyline. Political alliances form and collapse. Emperors rise and fall. Yet within the library, a different world exists. It is a world of patience rather than speed, preservation rather than conquest, memory rather than ambition. Here, the thoughts of people long dead continue speaking across centuries. Every shelf contains voices from the past waiting to be heard again. And you, the keeper of this place, stand quietly between those voices and the future. Most Romans will never know your name. No statues will honor your work. No triumphal parades will celebrate your achievements. Yet every day you help preserve the knowledge that allows civilization itself to endure. Long after famous politicians are forgotten and mighty armies have vanished into history, some of the scrolls you protect may still survive. Tonight, as oil lamps flicker softly among towering shelves and the sounds of the city fade beyond thick stone walls, You will discover what it was truly like to live the forgotten life of a Roman library keeper. Close your eyes, settle comfortably into your chair beside the ancient shelves, and let us step quietly into one of the most overlooked lives in the Roman Empire. Before the sun rises above the rooftops of Rome, you are already awake. The city is quiet in a way that few people ever experience. The markets have not yet opened. Merchants are still asleep. Even the endless noise of wagons and footsteps that usually fills the streets has not yet begun. Carrying a small oil lamp, you walk through narrow stone roads illuminated only by the faint blue light of dawn. Ahead of you stands one of the grandest buildings in your district. Not a temple, not a palace, but a library. To most citizens, it is simply a place where scholars spend their days reading old scrolls. To you, it is your entire world. As you approach the entrance, towering marble columns emerge from the darkness. Bronze doors decorated with scenes from Greek mythology reflect the first hints of morning light. You reach into your tunic and retrieve the heavy iron keys entrusted to your care. The lock clicks open with a familiar sound. For a moment, you stand quietly before entering. Soon the library will fill with visitors, conversations, and requests. But right now it belongs only to you. Pushing open the doors, you step inside. Cool air greets you immediately. The vast reading halls are silent. Rows of shelves stretch into the shadows. Hundreds upon hundreds of scrolls rest inside carefully organized cabinets made from cedar wood. The scent of papyrus, ink, wax tablets, and aged wood fills the room. It is a smell you have known for years. Some people might find it dull. To you, it smells like knowledge itself. Your first responsibility each morning is inspection. Libraries are fragile places. Unlike stone buildings, scrolls can disappear forever through fire, moisture, insects, or neglect. You move slowly through the halls, checking every section. Nothing appears out of place. The previous night's lamps have burned out safely. No rodents have found their way inside. No water has leaked through the roof after yesterday's rain. It may seem like a simple routine, but experience has taught you how quickly disaster can strike. Entire histories can vanish because of a single spark. Great poems can be lost forever because of a careless visitor. Preserving knowledge requires constant vigilance. Once the inspection is complete, you begin preparing for the day. The library's collection is enormous. Scrolls arrive from every corner of the empire. Some contain military records from distant provinces. Others preserve philosophical works copied from ancient Greek originals. There are texts on medicine, astronomy, engineering, law, agriculture, poetry, and history. Many visitors imagine that scrolls are simply placed on shelves without thought. In reality, organizing them is a task requiring immense care. Every scroll belongs to a specific category. Every category occupies a designated section. Every section must remain orderly so visitors can find what they seek. You spend the next hour rearranging several recently returned manuscripts. One by one, they find their proper places among thousands of others. As sunlight begins entering through high windows, the library slowly awakens. Dust particles drift through golden beams of light. Marble floors glow softly beneath the morning sun. For a moment, the room feels almost sacred. Temples honor the gods. Libraries honor memory. Both contain treasures, though only one can preserve the thoughts of generations long after they are gone. You often think about this while working. Somewhere on these shelves rests the wisdom of men who died centuries before your birth. Their voices survive because someone cared enough to copy and protect their words. Now that responsibility belongs to you. The first visitors arrive shortly after sunrise. A young student enters carrying wax tablets beneath his arm. He visits frequently and spends hours studying rhetoric. Someday he hopes to become a lawyer or public speaker. Behind him comes an elderly scholar searching for a particular Greek manuscript. Soon several others follow. Within an hour, the once empty halls are alive with activity. Quiet conversations echo between shelves. Sandals scrape against marble floors. Scrolls are carefully unrolled upon reading tables. You move constantly between visitors, answering questions and retrieving documents from storage areas. Many requests are simple. Others require considerable searching. Some visitors barely know what they seek. They remember only a title or an author's name heard months earlier. Finding the correct scroll sometimes feels like solving a puzzle. Yet this challenge is one of the parts of your work you enjoy most. Every request becomes a small journey through the library's endless collection. By midday, the building is fully alive. Scholars debate philosophy beneath towering columns. Students struggle through difficult texts. Wealthy senators consult historical records before political meetings. A poet sits quietly in the corner searching for inspiration. Looking around the room, you realize something remarkable. Although Rome is famous for its armies, roads, and emperors, none of those achievements would matter much without knowledge. Ideas shape civilizations just as surely as soldiers and politicians do. The library serves as one of the places where those ideas survive. Most visitors never think about the people who maintain it. They see the scrolls but not the hands that organize them. They admire the knowledge but rarely consider those who preserve it. Yet that has always been the fate of the library keeper. Your role is not to stand at the center of attention. Your role is to ensure that others can learn, study, and remember. And as voices fill the great hall around you, another ordinary day begins in the forgotten life of a Roman library keeper. Before the sun rises above the rooftops of Rome, you are already awake. The city is quiet in a way that few people ever experience. The markets have not yet opened. Merchants are still asleep. Even the endless noise of wagons and footsteps that usually fills the streets has not yet begun. Carrying a small oil lamp, you walk through narrow stone roads illuminated only by the faint blue light of dawn. Ahead of you stands one of the grandest buildings in your district. Not a temple, not a palace, but a library. To most citizens, it is simply a place where scholars spend their days reading old scrolls. To you, it is your entire world. As you approach the entrance, towering marble columns emerge from the darkness. Bronze doors decorated with scenes from Greek mythology reflect the first hints of morning light. You reach into your tunic and retrieve the heavy iron keys entrusted to your care. The lock clicks open with a familiar sound. For a moment, you stand quietly before entering. Soon the library will fill with visitors, conversations, and requests. But right now it belongs only to you. Pushing open the doors, you step inside. Cool air greets you immediately. The vast reading halls are silent. Rows of shelves stretch into the shadows. Hundreds upon hundreds of scrolls rest inside carefully organized cabinets made from cedar wood. The scent of papyrus, ink, wax tablets, and aged wood fills the room. It is a smell you have known for years. Some people might find it dull. To you, it smells like knowledge itself. Your first responsibility each morning is inspection. Libraries are fragile places. Unlike stone buildings, scrolls can disappear forever through fire, moisture, insects, or neglect. You move slowly through the halls, checking every section. Nothing appears out of place. The previous night's lamps have burned out safely. No rodents have found their way inside. No water has leaked through the roof after yesterday's rain. It may seem like a simple routine, but experience has taught you how quickly disaster can strike. Entire histories can vanish because of a single spark. Great poems can be lost forever because of a careless visitor. Preserving knowledge requires constant vigilance. Once the inspection is complete, you begin preparing for the day. The library's collection is enormous. Scrolls arrive from every corner of the empire. Some contain military records from distant provinces. Others preserve philosophical works copied from ancient Greek originals. There are texts on medicine, astronomy, engineering, law, agriculture, poetry, and history. Many visitors imagine that scrolls are simply placed on shelves without thought. In reality, organizing them is a task requiring immense care. Every scroll belongs to a specific category. Every category occupies a designated section. Every section must remain orderly so visitors can find what they seek. You spend the next hour rearranging several recently returned manuscripts. One by one, they find their proper places among thousands of others. As sunlight begins entering through high windows, the library slowly awakens. Dust particles drift through golden beams of light. Marble floors glow softly beneath the morning sun. For a moment, the room feels almost sacred. Temples honor the gods. Libraries honor memory. Both contain treasures, though only one can preserve the thoughts of generations long after they are gone. You often think about this while working. Somewhere on these shelves rests the wisdom of men who died centuries before your birth. Their voices survive because someone cared enough to copy and protect their words. Now that responsibility belongs to you. The first visitors arrive shortly after sunrise. A young student enters carrying wax tablets beneath his arm. He visits frequently and spends hours studying rhetoric. Someday he hopes to become a lawyer or public speaker. Behind him comes an elderly scholar searching for a particular Greek manuscript. Soon several others follow. Within an hour, the once empty halls are alive with activity. Quiet conversations echo between shelves. Sandals scrape against marble floors. Scrolls are carefully unrolled upon reading tables. You move constantly between visitors, answering questions and retrieving documents from storage areas. Many requests are simple. Others require considerable searching. Some visitors barely know what they seek. They remember only a title or an author's name heard months earlier. Finding the correct scroll sometimes feels like solving a puzzle. Yet this challenge is one of the parts of your work you enjoy most. Every request becomes a small journey through the library's endless collection. By midday, the building is fully alive. Scholars debate philosophy beneath towering columns. Students struggle through difficult texts. Wealthy senators consult historical records before political meetings. A poet sits quietly in the corner searching for inspiration. Looking around the room, you realize something remarkable. Although Rome is famous for its armies, roads, and emperors, none of those achievements would matter much without knowledge. Ideas shape civilizations just as surely as soldiers and politicians do. The library serves as one of the places where those ideas survive. Most visitors never think about the people who maintain it. They see the scrolls but not the hands that organize them. They admire the knowledge but rarely consider those who preserve it. Yet that has always been the fate of the library keeper. Your role is not to stand at the center of attention. Your role is to ensure that others can learn, study, and remember. And as voices fill the great hall around you, another ordinary day begins in the forgotten life of a Roman library keeper. Before the sun rises above the rooftops of Rome, you are already awake. The city is quiet in a way that few people ever experience. The markets have not yet opened. Merchants are still asleep. Even the endless noise of wagons and footsteps that usually fills the streets has not yet begun. Carrying a small oil lamp, you walk through narrow stone roads illuminated only by the faint blue light of dawn. Ahead of you stands one of the grandest buildings in your district. Not a temple, not a palace, but a library. To most citizens, it is simply a place where scholars spend their days reading old scrolls. To you, it is your entire world. As you approach the entrance, towering marble columns emerge from the darkness. Bronze doors decorated with scenes from Greek mythology reflect the first hints of morning light. You reach into your tunic and retrieve the heavy iron keys entrusted to your care. The lock clicks open with a familiar sound. For a moment, you stand quietly before entering. Soon the library will fill with visitors, conversations, and requests. But right now it belongs only to you. Pushing open the doors, you step inside. Cool air greets you immediately. The vast reading halls are silent. Rows of shelves stretch into the shadows. Hundreds upon hundreds of scrolls rest inside carefully organized cabinets made from cedar wood. The scent of papyrus, ink, wax tablets, and aged wood fills the room. It is a smell you have known for years. Some people might find it dull. To you, it smells like knowledge itself. Your first responsibility each morning is inspection. Libraries are fragile places. Unlike stone buildings, scrolls can disappear forever through fire, moisture, insects, or neglect. You move slowly through the halls, checking every section. Nothing appears out of place. The previous night's lamps have burned out safely. No rodents have found their way inside. No water has leaked through the roof after yesterday's rain. It may seem like a simple routine, but experience has taught you how quickly disaster can strike. Entire histories can vanish because of a single spark. Great poems can be lost forever because of a careless visitor. Preserving knowledge requires constant vigilance. Once the inspection is complete, you begin preparing for the day. The library's collection is enormous. Scrolls arrive from every corner of the empire. Some contain military records from distant provinces. Others preserve philosophical works copied from ancient Greek originals. There are texts on medicine, astronomy, engineering, law, agriculture, poetry, and history. Many visitors imagine that scrolls are simply placed on shelves without thought. In reality, organizing them is a task requiring immense care. Every scroll belongs to a specific category. Every category occupies a designated section. Every section must remain orderly so visitors can find what they seek. You spend the next hour rearranging several recently returned manuscripts. One by one, they find their proper places among thousands of others. As sunlight begins entering through high windows, the library slowly awakens. Dust particles drift through golden beams of light. Marble floors glow softly beneath the morning sun. For a moment, the room feels almost sacred. Temples honor the gods. Libraries honor memory. Both contain treasures, though only one can preserve the thoughts of generations long after they are gone. You often think about this while working. Somewhere on these shelves rests the wisdom of men who died centuries before your birth. Their voices survive because someone cared enough to copy and protect their words. Now that responsibility belongs to you. The first visitors arrive shortly after sunrise. A young student enters carrying wax tablets beneath his arm. He visits frequently and spends hours studying rhetoric. Someday he hopes to become a lawyer or public speaker. Behind him comes an elderly scholar searching for a particular Greek manuscript. Soon several others follow. Within an hour, the once empty halls are alive with activity. Quiet conversations echo between shelves. Sandals scrape against marble floors. Scrolls are carefully unrolled upon reading tables. You move constantly between visitors, answering questions and retrieving documents from storage areas. Many requests are simple. Others require considerable searching. Some visitors barely know what they seek. They remember only a title or an author's name heard months earlier. Finding the correct scroll sometimes feels like solving a puzzle. Yet this challenge is one of the parts of your work you enjoy most. Every request becomes a small journey through the library's endless collection. By midday, the building is fully alive. Scholars debate philosophy beneath towering columns. Students struggle through difficult texts. Wealthy senators consult historical records before political meetings. A poet sits quietly in the corner searching for inspiration. Looking around the room, you realize something remarkable. Although Rome is famous for its armies, roads, and emperors, none of those achievements would matter much without knowledge. Ideas shape civilizations just as surely as soldiers and politicians do. The library serves as one of the places where those ideas survive. Most visitors never think about the people who maintain it. They see the scrolls but not the hands that organize them. They admire the knowledge but rarely consider those who preserve it. Yet that has always been the fate of the library keeper. Your role is not to stand at the center of attention. Your role is to ensure that others can learn, study, and remember. And as voices fill the great hall around you, another ordinary day begins in the forgotten life of a Roman library keeper. As evening descends upon Rome, the library transforms into an entirely different world. The bright energy of the afternoon gradually fades, replaced by a quieter and more reflective atmosphere. Outside, the city remains alive with movement. Merchants close their stalls, families gather for meals, taverns begin filling with customers, and the sounds of daily life echo through the streets. Inside the library, however, calm slowly takes control. The crowds thin. Conversations become softer. The scratching of pens and the turning of scrolls replace the busy sounds of the day. Oil lamps are lit throughout the halls, casting warm golden light across marble floors and towering shelves. In these hours, the library feels less like a public building and more like a sanctuary devoted entirely to memory and knowledge. For many visitors, this is the most pleasant time to study. Distractions disappear, and the silence allows thoughts to wander freely through the ideas preserved within the scrolls. For you, however, evening marks the beginning of some of the most important work of the day. While others read and reflect, you begin preparing the collection for another night of survival. Fire remains your greatest concern. Every library keeper lives with the fear that a single careless flame could destroy centuries of accumulated wisdom. The shelves surrounding you contain thousands of fragile papyrus scrolls. One accident could erase histories, poems, scientific observations, and philosophical works that may exist nowhere else in the empire. Because of this, you move carefully through the halls, inspecting every lamp. You check the distance between flames and shelves. You ensure the oil burns properly. You verify that no visitor has left a lamp unattended. Some scholars find your caution excessive, but experience has taught you that disasters rarely announce themselves before they arrive. Preservation depends upon constant vigilance. As darkness deepens outside, a handful of dedicated scholars remain. Among them is an elderly historian who spends nearly every evening studying records from Rome's earliest days. You have watched him for years. While many visitors come and go, he remains a constant presence, patiently searching for details hidden within ancient texts. Observing him, you sometimes realize how similar your lives truly are. He preserves history by studying and recording it. You preserve history by protecting the materials that allow such study to occur. Neither of you seeks fame, yet both contribute to something larger than yourselves. Knowledge survives only because countless ordinary people dedicate their lives to preserving it. Later in the evening, a young copyist arrives carrying fresh sheets of papyrus and small containers of ink. His task is one of the most important within the library. Scrolls age just like people. Over time, they fade, crack, and deteriorate. Valuable works must therefore be copied repeatedly if they are to survive future generations. The copyist settles beside a lamp and begins carefully reproducing an aging manuscript line by line. Watching him work reminds you that every text on the shelves represents far more than the effort of its original author. Behind each surviving manuscript stand generations of copyists, librarians, scholars, and readers who refuse to let it disappear. Knowledge does not survive by accident. It survives because people choose to protect it. As the evening continues, visitors gradually depart until only a few remain. Eventually, even they gather their belongings and leave. The enormous halls grow silent. This is the hour you secretly enjoy most. Without crowds, the library reveals a different personality. Shadows stretch between shelves. The scent of old papyrus becomes more noticeable. Every footstep echoes softly through the building. You begin returning scrolls to their proper locations, moving slowly through the collection. Along the way, your attention occasionally lingers on certain titles. Histories of forgotten kingdoms, poems written centuries ago, philosophical arguments that once shaped entire schools of thought. There are more ideas contained within these walls than any one person could absorb in a lifetime. The realization never fails to amaze you. Eventually, your duties lead you into one of the oldest archive sections. Few visitors ever see this part of the library. Here rest some of the most valuable manuscripts under your care. Many are already ancient. Their papyrus has darkened with age. Some survive only because generations of librarians protected them from fire, moisture, insects, and neglect. Holding one of these scrolls creates a strange feeling. The author may have lived centuries before your birth. Entire empires may have risen and fallen since the words were first written. Yet somehow those thoughts remain alive. In moments like this, time itself feels less powerful than memory. A person may die, but ideas can continue traveling across centuries if someone is willing to preserve them. Near midnight, the final tasks begin. Records are updated. Reading tables are inspected. Remaining lamps are extinguished one by one. The warm glow slowly disappears until only moonlight enters through the high windows. The library stands silent and motionless. Looking across the darkened hall, you feel a sense of satisfaction difficult to describe. Most Romans will never think about the work required to maintain a library. They see shelves full of scrolls and assume they have always existed that way. Few realize how much effort is required simply to keep knowledge alive. Yet every organized shelf, every repaired manuscript, every safely extinguished lamp contributes to something greater than a single day's work. Before leaving, you pause in the center of the hall and take one final look around. Thousands of scrolls rest quietly in the darkness, each containing voices from the past waiting to speak again. Tomorrow scholars will return. Students will ask questions. New manuscripts will arrive. The cycle will continue. But for now, the library sleeps beneath the Roman night. You lock the great bronze doors and step outside into the cool evening air, carrying with you the quiet satisfaction of knowing that for one more day, Rome's memory remains safe. As the years pass, the library slowly becomes more than a workplace. It becomes the center of your entire life. You know every marble corridor, every reading room, every archive chamber hidden behind heavy wooden doors, and nearly every shelf within the enormous collection. New visitors often lose themselves among the endless rows of scrolls, but you can navigate the building almost without thinking. Sometimes you find yourself walking directly toward a particular manuscript before consciously remembering where it is stored. The knowledge has settled deep into your mind after years of repetition. Yet despite this familiarity, the library never feels ordinary. Every day reveals something new. A forgotten poem hidden among historical records. An unusual scientific observation copied from a Greek text. A travel account describing lands so distant they seem almost mythical. The library constantly reminds you that the world is far larger than the streets of Rome. One morning, shortly after sunrise, a messenger arrives carrying several sealed containers from a provincial city in the Eastern Empire. Such deliveries always attract attention. Scholars glance up from their reading tables. Students whisper to one another. Everyone wonders what new knowledge might be arriving. While others feel excitement, your first concern is preservation. New manuscripts cannot simply be placed on shelves. They must be inspected, cataloged, and carefully integrated into the collection. Sitting at a large wooden table, you begin examining the contents one by one. Some scrolls contain legal records. Others preserve speeches delivered before local assemblies. One manuscript appears to describe a journey across distant trade routes connecting Rome to lands far beyond the empire's borders. Reading a few passages, you briefly imagine deserts, mountains, and foreign cities that you will likely never see with your own eyes. Yet this has always been one of the library's greatest gifts. Through its scrolls, you travel farther than most citizens ever will. While your feet remain in Rome, your mind wanders across continents and centuries. As the collection continues growing, another problem becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. The library is running out of space. Every year brings new texts. Every year more shelves become crowded. Knowledge expands faster than buildings can contain it. Entire sections must occasionally be reorganized to accommodate fresh arrivals. For several days, you and a handful of assistants move hundreds of scrolls from one archive room to another. The work is exhausting. Dust fills the air. Heavy containers strain your shoulders. Yet organization remains essential. A library is only useful if people can find what they seek. The greatest collection in the world becomes worthless if its contents disappear into confusion. While reorganizing one section, you discover several manuscripts that have not been requested for years. Some contain detailed histories. Others preserve philosophical debates that once fascinated scholars. Looking at them, you wonder how many ideas slowly vanish not because they are destroyed, but because people simply stop reading them. Later that week, a wealthy senator arrives with several assistants and demands immediate access to historical documents related to an ongoing political dispute. Visitors like him often test your patience. Accustomed to authority, they expect the library to bend to their schedules. Yet even powerful men eventually discover that influence cannot replace knowledge. The senator may command respect throughout the city, but without the guidance of the library keeper, he cannot locate the information he seeks. As you search the archives, you reflect on a truth history rarely acknowledges. Great figures often depend upon ordinary people whose names are never recorded. Emperors rely on scribes. Generals rely on engineers. Senators rely on librarians. The library quietly reveals these hidden connections every day. Not long afterward, you encounter a young student who has been visiting regularly for several years. You remember his first days clearly. He struggled to understand even the simplest texts and often appeared overwhelmed by the enormous collection surrounding him. Now he debates philosophy confidently and researches complex subjects with remarkable determination. Watching his growth fills you with unexpected pride. You were never his teacher, yet you helped guide him through the library countless times. In some small way, you contributed to his education. Moments like this remind you why your work matters. The library is not merely a building filled with scrolls. It is a place where lives change. Every manuscript contains the possibility of inspiring a new idea, shaping a future career, or altering someone's understanding of the world. As evening approaches, the crowds gradually thin. Scholars return home. Students gather their notes. Reading tables empty one by one. Soon only silence remains. Performing your nightly inspection, you move slowly through the archive rooms while oil lamps cast flickering shadows across the shelves. The familiar scent of papyrus fills the air. Somewhere in the darkness rest works copied centuries before your birth. Others arrived only recently from distant provinces. Together they form an unbroken chain connecting past, present, and future. Walking among them, you begin thinking about the library keepers who served before you. Long before your arrival, other men performed these same duties. They organized shelves, repaired damaged manuscripts, guided visitors, and protected the collection from countless dangers. Most of their names have disappeared from memory, yet their work survives all around you. Without their efforts, many of the texts now resting safely on the shelves would have been lost forever. For the first time, you truly understand that you are part of something much larger than your own lifetime. One day, another keeper will walk these halls after you. He will perform the same inspections, solve the same problems, and protect the same collection. The thought does not make you feel insignificant. Instead, it brings comfort. You are one link in a chain stretching across generations. Before extinguishing the final lamp, you pause beside one of the oldest shelves in the library. The scrolls resting there have survived wars, political upheavals, natural disasters, and the passage of centuries. Looking at them, you realize that civilizations are not remembered solely because of armies or monuments. They are remembered because someone preserves their stories. And as darkness settles across the library and the great doors close for another night, you feel a quiet sense of purpose knowing that, for now, the memory of Rome remains safe in your care. By now, many years have passed since you first unlocked the library doors as a nervous young keeper, and Rome itself seems different from the city you once knew. New statues decorate public squares. Familiar politicians have disappeared from power, and entire generations of visitors have come and gone through the library's halls. Yet every morning, the same bronze doors open, the same shelves stand waiting, and the same scrolls continue carrying the voices of the past into the present. What once felt overwhelming now feels natural. You no longer need to think about where a manuscript belongs or which archive room contains a particular collection. The knowledge lives within you. Younger assistants often watch with amazement as you locate a requested scroll within moments, sometimes from memory alone. Years of daily work have transformed the library into something more than a workplace. It has become part of who you are. Increasingly, visitors come seeking not only access to manuscripts but also your advice. Students ask which philosophers are worth reading. Scholars seek recommendations for obscure sources. Copyists consult you when conflicting versions of a text appear. Without realizing it, you have become one of the most knowledgeable people in the building. Not because you wrote great books or delivered famous speeches, but because you have spent years surrounded by knowledge, quietly observing the connections between ideas, authors, and generations. The library has educated you in ways no formal teacher ever could. During one particularly busy summer, the reading halls become so crowded that every table is occupied from sunrise until evening. Young students prepare for examinations. Ambitious politicians search for historical examples to strengthen their speeches. Poets hunt for inspiration hidden within ancient texts. Watching them reminds you of a lesson learned long ago. People arrive at the library for many different reasons. Some seek wisdom, some seek success, some simply wish to appear educated. Yet the scrolls treat everyone equally. They offer their knowledge to whoever takes the time to listen. One afternoon, a traveler arrives carrying several smoke-stained manuscripts rescued from a provincial library that recently suffered a fire. The sight immediately captures your attention. Carefully examining the damaged scrolls, you feel both relief and sadness. Relief because these texts survived. Sadness because many others undoubtedly did not. For weeks afterward, much of your time is devoted to preserving the rescued manuscripts. Copyists work tirelessly to reproduce damaged sections. Fragile papyrus is reinforced wherever possible. Every effort is made to save what remains. The experience serves as a powerful reminder that knowledge is never guaranteed to survive. Every manuscript resting safely on the shelves exists because someone protected it during a moment of danger. As the years continue passing, another change becomes impossible to ignore. The assistants who once depended entirely upon your guidance are becoming skilled librarians themselves. They answer questions confidently. They train newer workers. They solve problems without your help. Rather than making you feel less important, the sight fills you with pride. A good keeper understands that knowledge must be shared if it is to survive. The future of the library depends upon those who will one day replace you. Watching them grow capable brings a sense of comfort you did not expect. Late one evening, after the final visitors have departed and silence settles across the halls, you wander through one of the oldest archive chambers. Oil lamps cast warm golden light across shelves packed with manuscripts gathered from every corner of the empire. Histories, poems, scientific observations, philosophical debates, legal records, and personal accounts rest side by side in quiet darkness. Standing among them, you experience a realization that has been slowly forming for years. When you first became a library keeper, you believed your responsibility was to protect scrolls. Now you understand that you have always been protecting something much larger. You are protecting memory itself. Every manuscript contains a voice that might otherwise be lost forever. Every shelf preserves a fragment of human experience. The library is not merely a building. It is a conversation stretching across centuries, connecting people who will never meet. Authors speak, readers listen, generations respond. and your role is to ensure that the conversation continues. Before leaving for the night, you pause beside a high window overlooking Rome. Moonlight shines across rooftops and distant streets. Somewhere beyond the library walls, merchants close their businesses, families share evening meals, and laborers rest after long days of work. Most of them will never know your name. Most will never think about the effort required to preserve the collection hidden within these walls. Yet, in countless invisible ways, their lives are influenced by the knowledge stored here. The ideas preserved in the library shape laws, medicine, engineering, literature, and education throughout the empire. Even those who never enter its halls benefit from the work performed within them. As you extinguish the final lamp and lock the great doors behind you, you feel a deep sense of satisfaction. The library remains safe. The shelves remain organized. Its knowledge remains protected. And for another day, the memory of Rome continues to endure beneath your care. The older you become, the more you begin to notice something that once escaped your attention. The library is not merely a place where knowledge is stored. It is a place where time itself gathers. Every day, people from different generations walk through the same doors seeking answers to different questions. Young students arrive hoping to understand the future. Elderly scholars arrive hoping to better understand the past. Politicians search for guidance, poets search for inspiration, and travelers search for information about lands they have never seen. Yet all of them eventually find themselves standing before the same shelves, reading the same voices preserved across centuries. After spending so many years among these scrolls, you have started to view the library differently. When you look at the collection, you no longer see papyrus and ink. You see countless lives connected together. Every manuscript represents a person who once sat down and decided that a thought was worth preserving. Every shelf contains the echoes of minds long gone. One autumn morning, a respected philosopher arrives from Athens and requests access to several rare texts. While assisting him, you find yourself listening to a discussion between the philosopher and a group of Roman students. The conversation lasts for hours. They debate ethics, politics, human nature, and the responsibilities of citizenship. Watching them, you realize that many of the questions being discussed are centuries old. The names of rulers may change, borders may shift, empires may rise and fall. Yet human beings continue asking the same fundamental questions generation after generation. What is justice? What is wisdom? What makes a good life? The library contains countless attempts to answer these questions, yet no final answer has ever been found. Perhaps that is why people continue returning. Not because knowledge solves every mystery, but because it helps us better understand them. As winter approaches, the weather grows colder and more visitors begin spending long hours indoors. The reading halls become busier than ever. Oil lamps burn throughout the day. The sound of turning scrolls fills the air from morning until evening. During these months, you often spend entire days moving between shelves, retrieving manuscripts, assisting scholars, and helping students locate materials for their studies. The work can be exhausting, but it also provides a strange satisfaction. Every request reminds you that the collection remains alive. Knowledge that is never used slowly fades into irrelevance. Knowledge that is read, discussed, and debated continues influencing the world. One evening, while returning several manuscripts to a rarely visited section of the archives, you discover a scroll that has not been requested in decades. Curious, you unroll it carefully and begin reading a few passages. The author lived hundreds of years earlier. His name is unfamiliar even to you. Yet his words immediately capture your attention. He writes about mortality, memory, and the fear of being forgotten. Sitting alone among the shelves, you find yourself unexpectedly moved. The man who wrote these words has been dead for centuries, yet at this moment his thoughts feel alive. Through the preservation of a simple scroll, he has managed to reach across time and speak directly to another human being. The realization feels almost magical. It reminds you that libraries perform a miracle every day. They allow conversations between people who will never meet. As the years continue passing, younger assistants increasingly take responsibility for many of the daily tasks. You still work as hard as ever, but you notice that your role is gradually shifting. More often, you are asked for advice rather than physical labor. New librarians seek guidance on organization systems. Copyists ask questions about obscure texts. Students request recommendations. At first, this change feels strange. Yet over time, you begin appreciating it. The knowledge accumulated through decades of experience has become one of your most valuable contributions. One snowy evening, after the library has closed and silence fills the halls, you walk slowly through the main reading chamber. Hundreds of empty seats surround you. Oil lamps flicker softly against marble columns. Outside, Rome continues its endless cycle of activity. Inside, everything feels still. Standing there, you realize that you have spent most of your life within these walls. Entire decades have passed among the shelves. You have watched children become scholars, students become teachers, and assistants become keepers. You have seen thousands of visitors come and go. Yet the library remains. The collection continues growing. New ideas continue arriving. Future generations continue seeking answers. For the first time, you fully understand that the library was never truly yours. You were simply one guardian among many, entrusted with protecting it for a brief moment in its long existence. And somehow, rather than making you feel small, that realization fills you with peace. Because long after your own story ends, the voices preserved within these shelves will continue speaking to those who come after. As the decades continue passing, you begin noticing the signs of age not only in yourself but also in the visitors who have shared the library with you for so many years. Students who once rushed through the doors with youthful excitement now arrive with streaks of gray in their hair. Scholars who spent entire afternoons debating philosophy now walk more slowly between the shelves. Some familiar faces disappear entirely, never to return. At first, such changes seem surprising. Then they become expected. The library quietly teaches a lesson that few people wish to learn. Everything changes, and everyone eventually becomes part of the past. Yet despite this constant cycle of arrivals and departures, the shelves remain. The scrolls endure. New readers take the places of old ones, and the conversation between generations continues uninterrupted. One spring morning, while helping a young student locate a historical manuscript, you suddenly recognize something of your younger self in him. His curiosity, his uncertainty, even the way he nervously handles the scroll remind you of the person you once were many years ago. The realization feels strange. For so long, you thought of yourself as one of the younger men working within the library. Now you have become one of its elders. Increasingly, students approach you not merely as a keeper of books, but as a source of wisdom. They ask questions about authors, history, and philosophy, but often they are really asking something deeper. They are searching for guidance. You answer as best you can, though you know experience is a teacher no scroll can replace. During this period, the the library receives one of the largest collections of manuscripts in recent memory. Several wealthy patrons have funded the copying of rare texts from across the empire, and new shipments arrive almost weekly. The task of cataloging and organizing them requires months of effort. Together with your assistants, you create new sections, reorganize archives, and expand storage areas. The work is exhausting, yet deeply satisfying. Each new manuscript feels like a small victory against forgetfulness. Somewhere, a writer's ideas have survived because someone believed they were worth preserving. Looking across the growing collection, you realize that the library is larger than it has ever been. It contains more knowledge than the builders who first constructed it could have imagined. Yet with that growth comes a responsibility that weighs increasingly heavily upon you. The larger the collection becomes, the more difficult it is to protect. One summer, a severe storm strikes Rome. Rain pounds the city for days. Water seeps into buildings. Streets flood. Throughout the storm, your greatest concern is the library. Together with several assistants, you spend hours inspecting roofs, moving vulnerable manuscripts, and protecting archive rooms from moisture. For days, you barely leave the building. When the storm finally passes, exhaustion settles into your bones. Yet as you walk through the archives and see the collection safe and intact, you feel a sense of relief difficult to describe. Once again, disaster has been prevented. Most visitors will never know how close some manuscripts came to destruction. They will continue reading them as though nothing happened. That is often the nature of your profession. Success means preserving knowledge so effectively that people forget it was ever in danger. As the years move forward, your daily responsibilities gradually change. Younger librarians handle many of the physical tasks that once occupied your days. They climb ladders, move heavy storage containers, and manage much of the routine organization. You still participate, but more often your role involves supervision and guidance. At first, surrendering these responsibilities feels uncomfortable. Yet you slowly come to understand that this transition is necessary. Knowledge survives because it is passed from one generation to the next. The same is true of the library itself. One evening, after the building has closed, you find yourself sitting alone in the main reading hall. The lamps cast a warm glow across the empty tables. Thousands of scrolls rest silently upon their shelves. Outside, Rome continues its endless activity, unaware of the quiet moment unfolding within the library walls. Looking around, you realize that you have spent most of your life here. More years than you can easily count have passed among these manuscripts. The library witnessed your youth, your maturity, and now the early signs of old age. It has been a constant companion through every stage of your life. For a moment, you imagine all the people who have sat in these halls before you arrived. The keepers, scholars, copyists, and readers whose names have vanished from memory. Then you imagine those who will come after you. Future generations will walk these same floors, open these same cabinets, and read many of the same texts. They will likely never know your name. Yet because of your efforts, the knowledge will still be here waiting for them. The thought does not make you sad. Instead, it fills you with a quiet sense of fulfillment. History often remembers emperors, generals, and famous writers. But libraries survive because ordinary people dedicate their lives to protecting them. And as you sit beneath the soft glow of the lamps, surrounded by centuries of preserved memory, you begin to understand that there is great dignity in being one of those people. By the time you reach the later years of your life, the library feels less like a building and more like an old companion that has aged alongside you. The marble floors are the same floors you walked upon as a young man. The shelves still stand where they always have, though many have been expanded and reorganized over the decades. The scent of papyrus and ink remains familiar, unchanged despite the passing years. Yet when you look around, you realize that almost everything else is different. Entire generations of scholars have come and gone. Students you once helped are now respected teachers. Young assistants who once followed your instructions now manage entire sections of the collection themselves. Time has moved forward with quiet determination, and somehow you have become one of the oldest figures within the library's walls. The realization arrives gradually rather than all at once. One morning, while watching a group of young students debate philosophy near a reading table, you suddenly recognize that none of them were even born when you first began working here. To them, you have always been the library keeper. They cannot imagine the nervous young man who once struggled to organize shelves and feared making mistakes. Their image of you is entirely different from the person you still remember yourself to be. The thought makes you smile. Perhaps every generation experiences this strange feeling eventually. Inside, they remain connected to their younger selves, while the world sees only the older person standing before them. During these years, your daily routine becomes calmer than it once was. Younger librarians handle most of the demanding work. They retrieve manuscripts, reorganize shelves, and manage deliveries arriving from across the empire. Your role increasingly revolves around guidance and oversight. Visitors often seek you out specifically, not because they need a particular scroll, but because they value your experience. Scholars ask for recommendations. Librarians consult you about difficult decisions. Students request stories about the library's past. At first, you find these conversations surprising. You never considered yourself particularly important. Yet you slowly realize that decades of experience have created a kind of knowledge no manuscript can provide. The library taught you lessons that exist nowhere on its shelves. One autumn afternoon, a young librarian asks what the most valuable item in the collection might be. The question seems simple at first. Many visitors would immediately point toward rare manuscripts or ancient historical records. Yet, after thinking for a moment, you give a different answer. The most valuable thing in the library, you explain, is not any single scroll. It is the fact that people continue caring enough to preserve them. Knowledge survives because each generation chooses to protect it. Without that commitment, even the greatest collection eventually disappears. The young librarian listens thoughtfully. Later, as you watch him carefully returning manuscripts to their shelves, you wonder if he truly understands what you meant. Perhaps he will one day. Some lessons require years before their full meaning becomes clear. As winter arrives, you spend more time simply observing the life of the library around you. There is a certain pleasure in watching younger people work. They move quickly through the halls, solve problems, assist visitors, and handle responsibilities that once belonged entirely to you. Occasionally they make mistakes. Occasionally they discover better methods than the ones you used. Both are natural parts of learning. Watching them, you feel a growing sense of confidence about the future. The library will survive. The collection will remain protected. The next generation is ready. One evening, after the final visitors have left, you wander slowly through the archive rooms. The halls are quiet except for the faint crackling of oil lamps. Long shadows stretch across the marble floors. You stop beside shelves containing manuscripts you have cared for throughout most of your life. Some arrived when you were still a young man. Others were rescued from damaged collections, copied by dedicated scribes, or donated by wealthy patrons. Together, they represent decades of effort by countless people. Looking at them, you feel something difficult to describe. Not pride exactly, and not nostalgia alone. It is a deeper awareness of having been part of something meaningful. You did not write these works. You did not create the knowledge they contain. Yet you helped ensure their survival. Sometimes that is enough. Near midnight, you find yourself standing in the main reading hall. Empty tables stretch across the room. Shelves disappear into the shadows beyond the lamplight. The silence feels peaceful rather than lonely. Closing your eyes for a moment, you can almost hear echoes of the past. The voices of scholars debating ideas. The questions of students seeking guidance. The quiet conversations of librarians performing their duties. Decades of life seem compressed into a single memory. When you open your eyes again, the room is unchanged, yet somehow different. For the first time, you fully understand that your own story is becoming part of the library's history. One day, another keeper will stand where you stand now. He may never know your name. He may never hear your story, but he will benefit from the work you performed, just as you benefited from those who came before you. And as you extinguish the final lamp and prepare to leave for the night, you carry with you a quiet sense of peace, knowing that some legacies do not need statues or monuments. Sometimes they survive simply through the continued existence of something worth protecting. As another year passes, you begin to understand that your relationship with the library is entering its final chapter. No official announcement marks this realization. No dramatic event suddenly changes your life. Instead, it arrives quietly through small moments scattered across ordinary days. You notice that climbing ladders leaves you more tired than it once did. Carrying heavy containers of manuscripts requires greater effort. Long hours on your feet feel longer than before. The younger librarians notice these changes as well, though they rarely mention them directly. More often than not, they step forward to handle difficult tasks before you even ask. At first, you resist their help. The library has been your responsibility for so long that accepting assistance feels uncomfortable. Yet gradually, you begin to understand that this is simply another part of the cycle you have witnessed countless times. Every generation eventually hands its responsibilities to the next. The same process that once elevated you is now preparing others to take your place. Rather than feeling saddened by this realization, you find yourself increasingly at peace with it. The library itself remains as busy as ever. Students continue arriving each morning carrying wax tablets and ambitious dreams. Scholars still spend entire afternoons studying obscure texts hidden deep within the archives. Messengers regularly deliver new manuscripts from distant corners of the empire. Looking around, it becomes clear that the collection no longer depends entirely upon you. The systems you helped maintain continue functioning smoothly. The assistants you trained have become skilled librarians in their own right. Problems are solved without your involvement. Questions are answered before they reach your desk. Years ago, such developments might have worried you. Now they provide comfort. The true success of a library keeper is not making himself indispensable. It is ensuring that the library can thrive without him. One afternoon, while walking through the reading hall, you pause beside a group of young students discussing a historical account. Their debate is passionate and energetic. They argue over interpretations, challenge each other's conclusions, and search through multiple sources in pursuit of evidence. Listening to them, you are struck by a simple realization. The library has accomplished its purpose. The knowledge preserved within these walls continues inspiring curiosity. New generations continue asking questions. ideas continue evolving. Long after the original authors died, their words remain alive. Standing there quietly, you feel an unexpected sense of pride. Not pride in yourself alone, but pride in the entire chain of people who made moments like this possible. Writers, copyists, scholars, librarians, and readers, all contributing to a conversation that stretches across centuries. As the months pass, you find yourself spending more time simply observing the life of the library. You notice details that once escaped your attention. The way sunlight moves across the marble floors during different seasons. The familiar sounds of scrolls being unrolled and returned to shelves. The expressions on visitors' faces when they discover exactly the text they have been searching for. These small moments seem more meaningful now. Perhaps it is because you understand how quickly time passes. Decades that once felt impossibly long now seem to have disappeared in an instant. Looking back, it is difficult to believe how many years have been spent among these shelves. The library witnessed your youth, your adulthood, and now your old age. Few companions remain in a person's life for so long. One evening, several younger librarians gather around you after closing. What begins as an ordinary conversation gradually turns into an evening of storytelling. They ask about the library's past. What was it like when you first arrived? Which visitors do you remember most clearly? What was the greatest challenge you ever faced? For hours you answer their questions. You tell stories about manuscripts rescued from fires, scholars who spent decades pursuing obscure research, students who eventually became famous teachers, and fellow librarians whose names have long since been forgotten. The younger workers listen with fascination. Through your memories, the library's past briefly comes alive again. As the conversation continues, you realize that knowledge is not stored only within scrolls. Some of it lives within people. Experiences, lessons, and stories are also part of the library's history. Sharing them feels important. Later that night, after everyone else has left, you walk alone through the building. The halls are silent. Oil lamps cast warm pools of light across the marble floors. Rows of shelves stretch into the darkness, filled with manuscripts that have survived generations of change. Moving slowly from room to room, you revisit places that shaped your life. Here you spent countless mornings organizing new arrivals. There you helped scholars locate rare texts. In another chamber, you worked late into the night protecting manuscripts during a storm. Every corner holds a memory. Every shelf reminds you of years that can never be repeated. Yet instead of sadness, you feel gratitude. Few people are fortunate enough to dedicate their lives to something they genuinely value. Eventually, you stop in the center of the main reading hall. The room is empty now, but in your mind it is filled with ghosts from the past. Students, scholars, librarians, and visitors from every stage of your life seem almost present in the silence. For a moment, the decades feel compressed into a single memory. Then the feeling passes, leaving only the quiet library around you. Looking across the endless shelves, you understand something that took a lifetime to learn. The library never truly belonged to any one person. It existed before you arrived, and it will continue after you are gone. You were simply entrusted with protecting it for a while. Somehow that realization feels beautiful rather than disappointing, because it means the story does not end with you. The conversation continues. The knowledge survives. And as you extinguish the final lamp and step into the cool Roman night, you carry with you the comforting certainty that the library's future is in good hands. As another year slips quietly into the past, you begin to sense that your time as the library's keeper is drawing toward its natural conclusion. No one says it aloud. There is no ceremony, no official decree, no sudden event that changes everything in a single moment. Instead, the realization arrives gradually, hidden within ordinary days. You notice that younger librarians increasingly seek your advice rather than your labor. When difficult decisions arise, they come to you for guidance. When rare manuscripts require special handling, they ask how similar situations were managed years ago. More and more, your role resembles that of a teacher rather than a caretaker. At first, this change feels unusual. For so long, your identity has been tied to the daily routines of maintaining the collection. Yet as time passes, you begin to appreciate this new position. Knowledge, after all, was never meant to remain in one place. Just as manuscripts are copied from one scroll to another, wisdom must pass from one generation to the next. The library has taught you this lesson countless times. One autumn morning, while walking through the reading hall, you pause beside a young student studying a historical text. The sight instantly reminds you of someone. After a moment, you realize who it is: yourself. Decades earlier, you stood in nearly the same spot, uncertain about your future, surrounded by shelves that seemed impossibly vast. You remember how intimidating the library once felt. You remember worrying about making mistakes, forgetting procedures, and failing to meet expectations. Looking at the student now, it is difficult to believe so many years have passed. The memory feels close enough to touch, yet separated from the present by an entire lifetime. Throughout the following weeks, you find yourself reflecting more often on the past. Certain shelves remind you of colleagues who are no longer alive. Certain reading tables bring back memories of scholars who spent years pursuing questions that fascinated only them. Every corner of the building seems connected to a story. The library has become a map of your life, each room holding memories accumulated across decades. Yet rather than feeling trapped by nostalgia, you experience a growing sense of gratitude. Few people are fortunate enough to spend their lives doing work they genuinely value. Fewer still have the opportunity to witness the long-term impact of their efforts. You have seen students become teachers, assistants become librarians, and young scholars become respected authorities. The library allowed you to watch knowledge pass from one generation to the next like a torch carried through time. One evening, after the library has closed, several younger librarians invite you to join them for a simple meal in one of the archive rooms. What begins as casual conversation soon becomes an evening devoted entirely to stories. They ask about events that occurred long before many of them were born. They want to hear about the old days, the challenges the library once faced, and the people who helped shape it. For hours you speak while they listen. You tell them about manuscripts rescued from storms, rare texts arriving from distant provinces, and scholars whose dedication bordered on obsession. You describe librarians who devoted entire careers to organizing sections of the collection most visitors never noticed. Some stories make everyone laugh. Others leave the room quiet for a moment. As the evening progresses, you realize something important. The library's history does not exist solely within its manuscripts. It also lives within the memories of those who cared for it. By sharing these stories, you are preserving another kind of knowledge. Later that night, after everyone has gone home, you remain alone inside the building. The silence feels familiar. It has accompanied you for most of your life. Slowly, you begin walking through the library one room at a time. You move without purpose, allowing memory to guide your steps. Here is the shelf where you spent weeks reorganizing manuscripts during your early years. There is the reading hall where generations of students struggled through difficult texts. In another chamber rests a collection you once helped save from moisture damage after a severe storm. Every location carries significance. Every room contains echoes of people who once filled it with life. As you continue walking, you become increasingly aware that the library itself has become a kind of manuscript, one written not with ink, but with experiences accumulated across decades. Near midnight, you enter the main reading hall. Moonlight streams through high windows and falls across the marble floor. The room is completely empty. Hundreds of seats stand quietly in the darkness. The shelves surrounding them contain thousands of voices waiting patiently for future readers. Standing there alone, you feel an overwhelming sense of perspective. For most of your life, the library seemed permanent while people appeared temporary. Now you realize that both are part of the same story. The library survives because generations of ordinary people dedicate themselves to preserving it. Without them, even the strongest walls would eventually become meaningless. You think about the keepers who served before you, men whose names have largely been forgotten. Their work allowed the collection to survive long enough for you to inherit it. In the same way, your efforts will help future librarians continue the task. The chain remains unbroken. That realization brings a profound sense of peace. Looking around the hall, you no longer feel like the owner or even the guardian of the library. Instead, you feel like one chapter in a much larger story. The building existed before your arrival. It will continue after your departure. And somehow, that thought feels comforting rather than sad. Before leaving, you extinguish the final lamp and stand quietly for one last moment. The darkness settles gently across the shelves. Somewhere within those countless scrolls are stories of emperors, philosophers, poets, soldiers, and ordinary citizens. Their voices survived because someone cared enough to preserve them. As you step outside into the cool Roman night and close the great bronze doors behind you, you understand that your own life has followed the same principle. You may never be remembered by history, but the work you devoted yourself to will endure. The library will open again tomorrow. Students will arrive. Scholars will search for answers. New ideas will be discovered. And long after your footsteps have faded from its halls, the conversation between past and future will continue exactly as it always has. As the final chapter of your life approaches, you find yourself spending less time thinking about the future and more time appreciating the extraordinary journey that brought you here. The library still opens each morning. The bronze doors still swing outward to welcome scholars, students, travelers, and curious minds. Sunlight still filters through the high windows and stretches across the marble floors exactly as it did decades ago when you first arrived. Yet everything feels different now. Not because the building has changed, but because you have. The young man who once stepped nervously into these halls exists only as a memory. In his place stands an old keeper who has devoted the better part of a lifetime to protecting the knowledge of an empire. Looking back, it is difficult to identify a single moment that defined your career. There was no great discovery, no dramatic triumph, no event that transformed you into a celebrated figure. Instead, your life was built from thousands of small acts repeated day after day. Returning a scroll to its proper shelf, guiding a student toward the right text, protecting manuscripts from moisture, fire, and neglect, teaching younger librarians the importance of patience and precision. None of these actions seemed extraordinary at the time, yet together they created something meaningful. The library survived. The collection grew. Knowledge endured. One morning, shortly after sunrise, you arrive before most of the staff. The building is silent. Dust dances through beams of golden light. For a while, you simply stand in the entrance hall and look around. Every column, every shelf, every reading table feels familiar beyond words. You know that one day soon these halls will continue without you, and surprisingly, the thought brings comfort rather than sorrow. Over the years, you have watched countless people arrive and depart. The library never stopped because a single person left. Its purpose was always greater than any individual. Understanding this allows you to let go peacefully. Later that day, several of the younger librarians ask you to join them in one of the reading halls. When you arrive, you discover that many of the library's regular visitors are there as well. Scholars, copyists, teachers, and students have gathered together. There are no grand speeches or official ceremonies. Instead, people simply share stories. A teacher recalls how you helped him locate a manuscript that shaped his entire career. A scholar remembers a rare text you spent days searching for. A librarian tells a humorous story from years earlier when a shipment of scrolls arrived completely mislabeled. The room fills with laughter. Listening to them, you realize something unexpected. The most important part of the library was never the scrolls alone. It was the people who came together because of them. Knowledge creates communities, connects strangers across generations. The library gave people a place to learn from one another, and in doing so it became far more than a collection of manuscripts. As evening approaches, the gathering slowly disperses. One by one, people return to their homes. The younger librarians resume their duties. The reading halls gradually empty. Eventually, you find yourself alone once more. The silence feels different tonight. Not lonely, not sad, simply peaceful. You begin walking through the building for what may be the last time in this role. Your footsteps echo softly through the corridors. You pass shelves that have accompanied you through decades of life. Some manuscripts arrived when you were young. Others appeared only recently. Together, they represent centuries of human curiosity, creativity, and determination. Stopping beside one of the oldest sections of the archive, you gently rest your hand against a shelf. The wood feels cool beneath your fingers. For a moment, memories flood your mind. The young student you once guided. The scholar who spent 30 years researching a single subject. The assistants who became librarians. The countless visitors whose names you never learned, but whose presence helped fill the library with life. They are all part of the story now. Eventually, you make your way to the main reading hall. Moonlight pours through the windows, illuminating rows of empty tables. The room is beautiful in its stillness. Standing there, you think about the countless voices resting on the shelves around you. Historians describing forgotten events. Philosophers asking impossible questions. Poets capturing moments of beauty. Scientists recording observations about the world. Most of those authors died long ago, yet their thoughts remain alive because someone preserved them. Suddenly, you understand your own place within that chain more clearly than ever before. You were never the hero of this story. You were never meant to be. Your role was simpler and perhaps more important. You were a bridge between generations. A caretaker who ensured that knowledge survived long enough to reach those who needed it. There is dignity in that. There is meaning in that. And there is peace in knowing that the work was worthwhile. At last, you extinguish the final lamp. Darkness settles gently across the hall. The shelves disappear into shadow, but you know they remain there, filled with voices waiting patiently for future readers. Turning toward the exit, you walk slowly across the marble floor one final time. The great bronze doors stand before you. Beyond them lies the city you have known your entire life. Before stepping outside, you pause and look back. The library is silent, calm, eternal. Then you smile, because you know what tomorrow will bring. The doors will open again. Students will enter searching for answers. Scholars will continue their research. Librarians will guide visitors through the collection. New manuscripts will arrive. New ideas will be discovered. The conversation between past and future will continue exactly as it always has. And with that comforting thought, you step into the cool Roman night, leaving the library behind but carrying its memory with you forever, knowing that while every human life eventually comes to an end, the knowledge we preserve can continue illuminating the world long after we are gone.